Hello friends. I am here with the final part of the Grey app. Tell me how you liked this story in the comments. So let's begin the last part of this story. The last part of the Grey app. I realized today was my last day. I quickly stood up. I pushed him to the side. I ran down the hallway. And straight to my kitchen. I checked for the knives. Looking for these. That was when I knew. He had taken them. I knew I had to do a lot to survive. He threw the knives out of the window. And tried to attack me. But I grabbed his hands. I had a bit of a struggle. I banged him on the wall. He fell. And I knew it was my chance. I tied his hands. And called the police. I waited for 20 minutes. They finally arrived. It was time to reveal the guy behind the mask. They came in. And they put handcuffs on SpongeBob. I was relieved. And glad it had came to an end. They unzipped the costume. To my surprise it was Nina. How could she do this, even went far as killing Gabriella? She was brought into questioning. And then put in jail awaiting for her trial. I went in to see her. How could you? You killed Gabriella. I said. Killing, listen to me. Trust me, it wasn't me. I had only purchased the costume that day you told me about your situation. I wanted to scare you for rejecting me. I didn't do anything. She said. I didn't trust her. I went home that day. And I was just relieved this had ended until I got a call. I answered it. Hi kiddo. I see you framed your friend Nina. I'm so offended. You really think I am a human? I am not human at all. He said and creepily laughed. Look behind you. I dropped the phone on the floor. I turned around to him holding an axe. With one spine-chilling smile. Bloodstains on his clothes and face. I quickly reacted by ducking, causing him to miss. And swinging his body the other way along with the axe. I stood. And ran towards the door. It was a bit of a struggle with my leg injury. I managed to get to the elevator. I wouldn't make it out if I had taken the stairs in my state. I would never make it. I pressed the button as fast as I could so it can arrive sooner. That was when I heard a tapping sound by the hallway. It was SpongeBob tapping his axe by the wall. By that he said. Kiddo, kiddo. Why are you making it this hard for us? I just came here to play. I can't kill you as your timer has set back again. He then creepily smiled. The light flickered off. And on he was not there anymore. I just wondered what was he here to do. That was until the elevator opened. And to my relief it was Jade. The girl I had met. I was so relieved. I looked to the side, there was no one. I smiled and hugged her. I led her to my apartment. She did ask me what was wrong and why I was sweating. I told her. It was nothing. We spent our time speaking and snacking while watching some movies on the Grey app. I know. It was wrong. Because everything started with the Grey app, but by that time it didn't seem wrong. After 3 hours. She went. And now I had to do one thing. Getting Nina out of jail before she got transferred. I went to the police station. With a lawyer for her. I first met with Nina. Vini, I have something to tell you. Nina said. Gabriella is my cousin. And I have half of the information about that demonic thing. SpongeBob is no normal human. SpongeBob is something very demonic. It's a spirit known as Shingina. A young man from China, who had moved to America to work with the creator of SpongeBob. One night, he was there working a night shift. He was editing as he noticed a file. He was curious as it stated SpongeBob Lost episodes. He decided to watch it. And after that day, he was mentally shocked to the point he committed suicide. People say justice wasn't served. He portrays himself as SpongeBob and kills or torments whoever watches the lost episode of SpongeBob. Nina said, "I was so creeped out as I had survived this domain's attacks. I asked her how could we stop him. We need to capture his spirit using the statue of Yohanzu. People have tried but failed. The statue of Yohanzu is only found in China." "What?" I said, as it seemed like something impossible. I wasn't on the budget of traveling. That was when I noticed a figure by Nina's back with an arrow pointed towards Nina back. SpongeBob looked even creepier as his eyes were popped out. He was smeared with blood on his face. He shot it. I quickly pushed Nina aside, causing us to fall from our chairs. It missed her. I looked up, and he wasn't there. I breathed in, and the guard came in. They asked me to get out. I did as told as they took Nina to her cell. I asked Mr. Fernando if Nina could be out. He said, yes, but she should stay within the area until her trial is over. How was I going to get the statue without her? We got her out. We went home as we had to think of a plan. What can we do? Nina asked. I knew there wasn't any other choice. But I had to go to China without her. I bought my tickets. And my plane was boarding tomorrow. I had to stay with Nina as I had to protect her against this evil thing. As she won't survive, let alone last the whole night alone. We stayed awake all night. And SpongeBob didn't show up that night. It was now 5 a.m. And I had to China. I asked Jane to stay with Nina until I came back and that they had to be careful. I got to the airport and sorted out everything. I got on the plane. It was my first time. And it was exciting. But I knew I shouldn't give in to my feelings and forget what I'm going to do in China. The airplane took off. And it was a peaceful. I slept and I awoken. Do you want some food, kiddo? I knew it was him. I quickly looked up. And without a minute passing by, SpongeBob stabbed the knife into my chest repeatedly. I tried to scream and call out. But no one came to my help. I could feel myself getting weaker and weaker until everything went blank. I was panting heavily as I woke up. I checked my surroundings. And he wasn't there. I stood up and went to the toilet. I used it. And as I was washing my hands, the light flickered. I knew every time the light flickered, he will show up, so I acted faster by going out the toilet. As the journey was long, I looked like a crazy freak. The flight finally landed. I was happy as I hadn't seen SpongeBob in the plane. I got out all happy. And it was great while it lasted, as I heard, I hope you had a great flight, kiddo. I looked back. And it was the flight attendant. I breathed out of relief. And continued walking. I got my bag and stuff. I checked in a hotel as it was late. I had to survive another day again. I took a shower to relax. And as I was drying up my hair with a towel, I looked at the mirror. and my reflection wasn't moving. I dropped the towel and stepped back a few inches. My reflection then smiled. And what happened next was horrific and spine-chilling. My reflection had a knife. He then stabbed a knife into his hand. I couldn't get what he was doing as he used the other hand to write something with his blood. I looked closer, and it read the following. "Why are you helping my killers, kiddo?" I stumbled upon confusion which ran through my mind. "Killers?" I asked. He then disappeared. "Come back and explain," I shouted. And there was no sign of him. He hadn't just freaked me out, but left me with 1,000 questions. I fell asleep that night peacefully. I woke up and showered. I was being bothered by the question he asked yesterday. And what did he mean by killers? I got breakfast on my way to the village where I could get the statue. I finally got there after a 2 hours drive from the hotel. I was directed to an ancient shrine. I got there, and I met a guy who looked to be in his mid-30s. I couldn't help but wonder why this guy would wanna be here guarding ancient swords and statue instead of living life to the fullest. I was expecting an old man. He looked at me, and I bowed with my hands at my back as I was told. "Hajime mashite, watashi wa vinadesu. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu." "Hi, I'm Vini, nice to meet you," I said. "No, I can speak English plus that is Japanese. Your taxi driver fooled you because you never paid him a tip. Just come with me. I know what you're here for." The man laughed and led the way. "How did you know that?" I said, following him. "Long story, I'll explain later. But I need to help you before things get out of hand." I felt like a fool in front of him. Luckily he seemed kind. I stood by the corner as he searched for the statue. "Some things are not as you think, my boy. For you to understand your current situation, you have to get the other side of the story. He did not just commit suicide, but he was murdered by the one he trusts the most. Ask Nina, your trusted friend. She hasn't been honest with you," he said as he took the statue. I looked at him as he handed me the statue. I thought about it, and I finally understood. Oh no, please don't tell me it was. I went back to the hotel that day. I got on the plane. The very next day the journey back home was interminable. After 6 hours, I got home and there was Nina. She smiled and greeted me. The silence suffused throughout the atmosphere. Luckily, my anger didn't invigorate me. So I smiled and said, "Hi." That night I was so peeved as this garrulous girl talked throughout the night. The clock struck 12 a.m. and it was time for me to maneuver my plan. Nina prepared everything. A huge red circle with a sign was in the middle of the living room, where each corner of the sign had a red candle. Nina tutelaged me to close my eyes and not to open them. We sat inside the circle with the statue in the middle. She then began to talk in tongues. I didn't trust her, as my mom told me to fear people who speak in tongues, as they might be communicating with the domains. I opened my eyes and looked around. It was dark and creaky. She then opened her eyes, but they were black. She seemed to be looking at the back of me. I slowly turned to see Shinja this time. He wasn't in the SpongeBob costume. He looked so different. His eyes were white as snow. His hand was missing. His shirt was torn as blood splashings were on it. And his skin was grey. I couldn't help but flinch. I thought. I tutelaged you to close your eyes. Do you know your actions have left us susceptible to death? Nina said. Before I replied. We were pushed apart by some forceful wind or power. I looked at Shanji, who was standing 2 inches from me. He held my collar. I felt my knees get weak. My body trembled as I could smell the sense of death. Nina stood up. Leave high. Before she could finish, Shanji levitated her and threw her across the room, knocking her out. Listen to me, Shanji. I know you only here to take revenge. Before killing us, I want to know your side of the story. Please let me help you. He seemed to hesitate. But finally he left my collar. How can you help me? When you failed to help me back in the studio when Nina had stabbed me. Don't you remember your tour, kiddo? He said in a deep masculine voice. I felt like I was lost in the woods as I couldn't get what he was talking about. Until a memory came back running. I was by the studio that day Shanji died. I was offered a tour within the studio. As I was taking a tour, I decided to go check out the picture. I heard a sound more like help. I heard it from the room that was on my right. But I didn't open the door as my friend had been sent to fetch me. I didn't open the door. That was a cry for help. You left me there to die. The company hid the truth and said it was suicide due to the lost episode of SpongeBob just to save their reputation. Gabriella died for knowing what her cousin did but not reporting it. Enough about that. Now I'm here to make sure you pay for your sins, he said. He opened his mouth as wide as a well. The one where you get water. Thought of putting this. He grabbed me by my collar and lifted me from the ground. I looked inside his mouth, and his teeth that filled his whole mouth and throat were as sharp as a knife. I closed my eyes as I could see death knock on my doorstep until I had a plan that would let his soul rest in peace. If I can make sure Nina is punished, will your soul rest in peace? He put me down and nodded. 1 week later. Whatever happened that night was horrific and spine-chilling. But I had to survive. Is it ready, kiddo? He called from the sitting room. Yes, I am coming, I said, while taking the food to him. Is it Nina's arm? He asked. And I agreed while watching him take a bite of each. And every flash he could get out of it. That day, I had told him about getting Nina to confess and getting her arrested. But he said it wouldn't be satisfying. I thought of a way to make her suffer slowly. Each and every day, I would cut one of her limbs or body parts and serve it to Shinja. I could say I might have also liked the taste of her flesh. He agreed and spared me. I was basically leaving with a demonic thing. I just hope it doesn't backstab me and go back on our deal. As they say, never trust the devil, as he might never keep his promises.